like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
Wow. Talk about breaking news. A federal court just upheld the ban on TikTok.
Yeah.
And that means it's set to go into effect January 19th, 2025.
Oh, wow.
Remember all those debates about national security versus free speech?
Right.
Well, things just got real.
Yeah.
We've got this in-depth Forbes article by Allison Durkee breaking it all down. And on this deep dive, we're going to help you understand exactly what this ruling means,
Okay.
what happens next, and why it matters,
All right.
whether you're a TikTok fanatic or haven't even downloaded the app.
So the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals basically said the ban stands.
Yeah.
TikTok put up a fight, though, right?
Oh, yeah. They argued that it violates free speech
Yeah.
and that separating from its Chinese parent company, ByteDance,
Uh-huh.
would be incredibly difficult.
Right.
But the
Yeah.
court wasn't convinced.
It's interesting. To understand why, we got to look at the court's reasoning.
Okay.
They're not saying the content on TikTok itself is the problem. It's about who owns and controls the platform, a foreign company, with access to tons of data on U.S. citizens.
Right.
That's where the national security concerns come in.
But isn't that like a slippery slope?
Yeah.
I mean, couldn't this set a precedent
Sure.
for governments to ban any online platform they don't like,
Yeah, that's a really valid concern.
even if the content itself isn't harmful?
Yeah. The court was careful to distinguish this case from general content censorship.
Oh,
They emphasized that the First Amendment protects the right to express oneself,
right.
but it doesn't necessarily guarantee a foreign company
Okay.
the right to operate a platform with potential national security implications within the U.S.
Yeah.
It's a complex legal issue with no easy answers.
This is where things get really interesting, though.
Yeah.
The court actually cited some previous Forbes reporting about some, shall we say, less than transparent practices by TikTok.
Oh, really?
We're talking allegations of spying on journalists,
Oh, wow.
promoting pro-China propaganda,
Huh?
and questionable data handling. Not exactly confidence-inspiring, is it?
No, it's not. And while these reports weren't the sole basis for the ruling,
Okay.
they definitely contribute to the overall picture of potential risk.
Yeah.
This raises a crucial question.
What's that?
How much can we trust any tech platform with our data,
Right.
especially when international relations are involved?
Okay, so for our listeners who might be thinking,
Right.
I don't even use TikTok, why should I care?
Yeah.
Trust me, this case goes way beyond a single app. This could potentially impact how governments around the world regulate the internet,
Okay.
and that affects all of us.
Absolutely. Imagine a scenario where governments could just shut down any online platform they deem a risk, regardless of the evidence. It could has a chilling effect on freedom of speech and access to information online.
All right, let's get down to brass tacks.
Okay.
What happens if this ban actually goes into effect on January 19th? What does that look like
Yeah.
for the millions of people who do use TikTok?
Well, practically speaking, new downloads and updates would be blocked from app stores. Over time, the app would essentially become unusable.
Right.
The Forbes article even mentions that Oracle,
Yeah.
the company that handles TikTok's U.S. data,
Mm-hmm.
would be legally obligated to block access.
Wow, no more workarounds.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big deal for the over 170 million TikTok users in the U.S.
Yeah,
That's more than half the country.
it is.
But hold on a second.
Yeah.
There's another layer to this whole story.
Oh, what's that?
There's been a lot of buzz about President-elect Trump
Oh, yeah.
and his potential involvement. Seems surprising, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
I mean, hasn't he been all about cracking down on big tech?
Right.
Not just-
It seems counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But the article suggests a few possible reasons for his stance. It's possible he sees this ban as overreach by the outgoing administration.
Right.
Or maybe he's concerned about the political ramifications of alienating millions of young voters who use TikTok.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what could Trump actually do to stop the ban?
Well,
This is a federal court ruling we're talking about.
right.
Not exactly something you can just ignore.
You're right.
Yeah.
He does have some options,
Okay.
each with its own set of legal and political hurdles.
Yeah.
He could, for example, refuse to enforce the ban, or he could try to declare TikTok compliant,
Oh, wow.
even if it hasn't fully separated from ByteDance.
Wait, wouldn't that cause a whole other set of problems?
Yeah.
Defying a court ruling seems like a risky move.
It certainly would. And declaring TikTok compliant without any real changes would likely trigger lawsuits from other tech companies who would see it as unfair.
Right.
It's a tricky situation, to say the least.
But this isn't just about TikTok, is it?
No, it's
this whole situation. It's really a microcosm of the larger struggle between governments and tech companies. The future of online freedom and how we navigate these complex issues in an increasingly interconnected world.
You hit the nail on the head. This deep dive is about so much more than a single app. It's about understanding the forces that are shaping the digital world we live in and what's at stake for all of us.
And that's just the beginning. So we were just talking about how President-elect Trump might try to stop this TikTok ban. But even if he does try to intervene, there's no guarantee he'd succeed.
No, not at all.
The legal system, it's got its own complexities, and challenging a court ruling, it's no small feat.
It would be unprecedented, to say the least.
So let's play this out. Let's say, for argument's sake, the ban does go into effect as planned. What does that mean for your average TikTok user? Are we talking a forced digital detox? Or will people just find workarounds?
As we discussed, new downloads and updates would be blocked, essentially rendering the app unusable over time. It's possible some users might try VPNs or other methods to access TikTok, but those aren't always reliable, and they often come with their own security risks.
So there are real downsides to trying to bypass the ban. It's not just a matter of missing out on the latest viral dance trend.
Exactly. Using unverified VPNs or downloading apps from unverified sources can expose your device to malware and data breaches. It's a digital Wild West out there, and it's important for users to be aware of the risks.
That's good to know. But let's zoom out for a moment. This whole TikTok situation feels like the tip of the iceberg, wouldn't you say?
I'd agree with that. We're seeing a global shift in how governments are approaching technology and data security. There's this growing tension between national interests and the free flow of information online, and it's playing out on a global stage.
It's like we're at a crossroads trying to figure out how to balance the undeniable benefits of a connected world with these new and complex risks. And honestly, those risks can feel pretty abstract sometimes.
That's the challenge, How do you effectively communicate the potential dangers of data breaches or foreign influence to people who may not see any immediate tangible harm? It's a bit like trying to explain the importance of cybersecurity before you've ever experienced a hack firsthand.
You don't know what you got till it's gone. Maybe we take our digital freedoms for granted until something like this potential TikTok ban really brings the issue front and center.
Precisely.
And even then, the conversation often gets framed in these very polarized terms.
For sure.
It's either ban everything for the sake of security or absolute freedom, no matter the cost. But the reality is much more nuanced than that.
It is.
Finding a balance requires carefully considering both sides.
Absolutely.
One thing that stood out to me in the Forbes article was how the court emphasized the difference between banning content and banning ownership of a platform. It wasn't about censoring what people were posting on TikTok. It was about who controls the data behind those posts.
That's a crucial distinction.
And it goes back to the question of trust.
It does.
In this case, the court determined that the potential for TikTok's Chinese parent company to misuse user data posed too great a risk to national security. But that brings up some uncomfortable questions, doesn't it?
It does.
How much can we trust any tech company with our data? Especially when you consider the potential for political influence or manipulation.
We've seen examples of social media platforms being used to spread misinformation, interfere with elections, and even incite violence. And as these platforms become increasingly powerful, the stakes just keep getting higher.
It almost feels like we're constantly playing catch-up, trying to adapt our laws and regulations to this digital landscape that's changing faster than we can keep up.
It's a good analogy. And this TikTok case is a prime example of those challenges playing out in real time with very real consequences.
But even if TikTok disappears from the U.S. app stores, the underlying issues will remain.
They will.
This isn't just about TikTok, is it?
No, it's not.
It's about the future of the internet.
Right.
And our relationship with technology as a whole.
Yeah.
And it's a conversation we need to be having now.
Absolutely.
Not just when a crisis forces our hand.
I couldn't agree more. And this case highlights an important truth.
What's that?
We as users have a role to play in shaping that future.
Right.
We need to be informed, engaged, and willing to ask tough questions about who has access to our data and how it's being used.
We can't just be passive consumers of technology.
Right.
We need to be active participants in shaping its future.
Precisely.
That Forbes article really drove that point home.
Yeah.
Especially with those surprising revelations about TikTok's practices. It's like a real-life thriller playing out in the courtroom.
Yeah.
And those reports seem to have really influenced the judge's decision. You know, this reminds me of.
What's that?
Remember the Cambridge Analytica scandal a few years back?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It really opened our eyes to how our data could be used and misused in ways we never imagined.
That was a watershed moment.
Yeah.
And this TikTok case is a reminder that those concerns haven't gone away.
Yeah.
If anything, they've become even more urgent.
We need to be vigilant.
Yeah.
And we need to demand more transparency and accountability.
Absolutely.
From these tech giants.
I think that's a key takeaway here.
Yeah.
It's not just about governments regulating these platforms. It's about users understanding their own power and responsibility in the digital ecosystem.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
Yeah.
From the court's decision to President-elect Trump's potential involvement.
Right.
The implications for online freedom.
Yeah.
And the broader questions about data privacy and trust in big tech.
It's a lot to process.
Yeah.
But it's clear this story is far from over.
It's a complex issue.
It is.
With no easy answers.
Right.
But that's what makes it so compelling, wouldn't you say?
I think so, yeah.
It forces us to confront these fundamental questions.
Yeah.
About the internet, technology, and the kind of future we want to build.
Absolutely.
I think that's a perfect segue into our final part. Because when we come back, we'll be diving into the potential legal battles ahead.
Right.
And what they could mean for the balance of power between governments and big tech.
Sounds good.
Stay tuned. We're back for the final part of our deep dive into this whole TikTok saga, and things are about to get even more interesting.
Oh, yeah?
We've talked about the court's decision, the potential for presidential intervention, the impact on users, and the broader implications for online freedom and data privacy.
Right.
But this story doesn't end there.
It doesn't. This case is far from over.
TikTok has already hinted at appealing to the Supreme Court. And that could set the stage for a landmark decision on the balance of power between governments and tech giants.
So we could be looking at a legal showdown of epic proportions.
Free speech versus national security.
Right.
Silicon Valley versus Washington, D.C. It sounds like something straight out of a Hollywood movie.
It does have all the elements of a high-stakes drama.
And the outcome could have ripple effects across the entire tech industry.
Yeah, for sure.
If the Supreme Court upholds the ban,
it
could embolden other governments to take similar actions against companies they perceive as risks.
It could reshape the digital landscape as we know it.
That's a pretty sobering thought.
Yeah.
It's almost like watching a game of legal chess where every move has the potential to change the entire game board.
Right.
What are some of the key legal arguments we might see play out?
Okay.
If this case does go to the Supreme Court.
Well, TikTok is likely to argue that the ban violates the First Amendment's protection of free speech.
Okay.
They'll likely claim that the government hasn't provided sufficient evidence of a clear and present danger to national security.
Okay.
They might also argue that the ban is overly broad
right.
and restricts more speech than necessary to achieve its stated goal.
On the other hand, the government is likely to double down on its national security concerns.
Right. They'll likely present evidence, first classified intelligence, to support their claim that TikTok poses a risk due to its potential for data sharing with the Chinese government.
Right.
They'll also likely argue that the ban is narrowly tailored to address that specific threat. And doesn't unnecessarily infringe on free speech rights.
Yeah.
It will be a battle of legal experts and competing interpretations of the Constitution, and the outcome is far from certain.
You know what strikes me about this whole situation?
What's that?
Is how divided public opinion seems to be. You've got people who are fiercely against the ban.
Right.
Seeing it as a blatant attack on free speech. And they've got others who fully support it, citing those national security concerns we've been talking about.
Right.
It feels like we're talking past each other, unable to find any common ground.
You've hit on a crucial
It
point.
feels like this case has become a flashpoint
Yeah, for sure.
in a much larger debate about the role of technology in society
Right.
and the balance between security and freedom in the digital age.
And finding that balance is going to require more than just legal arguments.
What else?
It requires open dialogue,
Right.
a willingness to consider different perspectives,
Yeah.
and a commitment to finding solutions that address everyone's legitimate concerns.
I hear you. It's easy to get swept up in the legal back and forth.
Right.
But this is ultimately about something much bigger.
It is.
It's about figuring out how we want to govern the internet,
Yeah.
how we protect our data, and how we ensure that technology serves humanity,
Right.
not the other way around.
Well said.
And this TikTok case,
Right.
it's a powerful reminder that we can't afford to be passive bystanders in this conversation.
We all have a stake in the outcome,
Yeah.
whether we're TikTok users or not.
We need to stay informed,
Absolutely.
engage in thoughtful discussions,
Yeah.
and hold our elected officials accountable for making decisions that reflect our values.
That's a great point.
I think that's the perfect note to end on.
Oh,
This deep dive into the TikTok ban has been a real roller coaster ride.
it has.
We've explored the legal intricacies,
Right.
the political maneuvering, the impact on users,
Yeah.
and the broader questions about the future of the internet.
A lot to unpack.
And it's clear that this story is far from over.
Yeah.
But what have we learned along the way? What are the key takeaways you hope our listeners will walk away with?
I think the biggest takeaway is that the digital world is evolving at an incredibly rapid pace,
Yeah,
and our legal and social frameworks are struggling to keep up.
right.
This case highlights the complex challenges we face in trying to balance competing interests in a digital age, security versus freedom,
Right.
national sovereignty versus global connectivity,
Yeah.
the power of technology versus the rights of individuals. There are no easy answers. I hear you. But the conversations we're having now will shape the digital world we inhabit for years to come.
And that's why it's so important for all of us to be engaged, informed,
Absolutely.
and willing to ask tough questions.
For sure.
We can't just sit back and let these decisions be made for us.
Right.
The future of the internet is something we all have a role in shaping.
That's right.
So stay curious, stay engaged, and keep asking those tough questions.
Yeah. Good advice.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been quite a journey.
Indeed it has.
And remember, the deep dive never truly ends.
That's right.
There's always more to learn, more to explore, and more to discuss.
Until next time.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have the ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're